Hey guys, I'm Zach Steele. This is Tyler Hobart. This will be the trade video for the week. We'll just go over 10 players that you should buy this week and 10 players that you should sell. So
Yeah,
to start, I really think you should look to target Miles Sanders. I know he's going into a bye this week and coming off of injury, but they've got a really nice schedule down the stretch. And like I've been saying previously, he's going to be a top 10 running back the rest of the season if he manages to stay healthy. Um, Likely the Miles Sanders owner needs a win this week because I'm sure they've had a rough stretch these last several weeks. So you can probably get him at a discount. And he's a guy that could really help pull you through a championship.
I agree. So I have Austin Eckler on here for similar reasons. Herbert seemed to take that offense to another level instead of regressing. So I think if Austin Eckler sitting on someone's injury reserve spot and you're in a prime place to go to the playoffs, I think you should go look to get him for cheap.
I agree. So the other guy I'm putting on here is Deontay Johnson. I know he's been really frustrating for owners this year. He seems to leave every game with an injury, or at least every other game. But um, likely you're getting him really cheap, and I still think he's the receiver to own in Pittsburgh if he's healthy. Um, he gets a lot of volume when he's on the field. This last week was a tough matchup with the Ravens, so I think you're going to see better days going forward. And he's a guy that could be a solid wide receiver 2 anchor for you, and you're not going to have to pay that.
Mm-hmm. So I have Darren Waller on here because the top three tight ends are pretty heavy, and he's tight end 3. And so I think anytime you can make a move for him, you have to go get him. He's had at least 7 targets in 6 of 7 games. And tight end possession is just so weak that I think if you can go take him from that owner for a wide receiver too, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, with Kittle gone, he's the number 2 tight end now. So,
Yeah, now Kittle's done. Yeah.
so at 5 here, I'm not necessarily as confident in this as I have been previously, but I still think you should go buy Jonathan Taylor. Came out that he was dealing with a bit of an injury, so he obviously didn't look very effective, and a lot of people are really worried about Wilkins taking over the role there. I'm still fairly confident that Jonathan Taylor is the best running back in that offense, and that by the end of the season, he's going to be the main guy. And you're probably getting him pretty cheap. He looked really bad this last week, and he wasn't even the main guy. So I think a lot of owners are going to be really concerned, and you can get him at a really big discount.
Mm-hmm. So I have Robbie Anderson on here. He had a bit of a down week, fantasy wise last week, but he still had 8 targets. And so I think he's a high end wide receiver 2, if not potentially wide receiver 1 some weeks. So I think he makes a great buy candidate this week for owners that maybe even think DJ Moore is still the number 1 guy there.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't have the name value attached to him either, so that really helps.
Yep.
So another guy I've got here is Josh Allen. He started out the season on fire, and he's had 4 pretty much bad weeks in a row, but they just haven't really been getting touchdowns. You saw Zach Moss run 2 in this week, and I don't think that's something that continues throughout the season. If Josh Allen had thrown for 1 or 2 of those, then he looks like he had a really different game fantasy wise. And he gets the Seahawks this week, so you know he's going to have a great fantasy game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think the buy low window is going to really slam shut, and I think he's a guy that really gives you an edge because he should be a top 5 tight end the rest of the season. And I think the fantasy owner there is going to be pretty frustrated with these last 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. So I have Raheem Mostert on here. I think he's a good buy low because that offense is just so banged up that they don't have a clear guy to go to. And Mostert's been there for a while, and he's taken that running back role with stride. He's been fantastic for them. Gets like a ton of touches, like 15 a game. And so I think if you can get a player like that, he's fantastic and will put up great points for you week to week.
Yeah, I agree. So at 9 here, I've got Kenny Galladay. Obviously, you're not buying him if you need to win these next couple weeks, but say you're 6-2, 7-1. He's a guy that you're obviously going to get at a discount because he's going to miss this week and likely more. It sounds like his injury is somewhat serious with the hip, but when it comes down to it, he should be a top 10 tight end. Come the fantasy or receiver, not tight end. Top 10 receiver come fantasy playoffs, and he's a guy that you're not going to have to pay for that because you aren't going to get that for the next several weeks. But if you're a winning team right now, you don't need him, and when he comes back, he could really put you over the edge.
Mm-hmm. So I have Marquis Brown on here because outside of his terrible week last week, only had like 1 catch for 3 yards. Prior to that, he was seeing 6 targets a game. And so I think if you can go get a wide receiver for ridiculously cheap like him, you can really round out your flex position or your third wide receiver spot for free.
Yeah, he's not going to be expensive at all. So, moving into guys, I think you should sell high on. This will be your weekly reminder to sell Todd Gurley if you haven't already. He keeps scoring touchdowns. He's somehow RB5 on the season with all the touchdowns he's gotten, and he's just not been efficient. He doesn't look good. He's apparently banged up now, and that's why he didn't get all the work last Thursday. I'm worried he's going to get even worse with those knee issues as the season goes on. And he's a guy, I mean, most teams need a healthy running back right now, and they're going to welcome the opportunity to add one, but he's not going to be elite the rest of the season, and you can probably trade him for some top-tier caliber players, so just do it.
Mm-hmm. So I have Dalvin Cook on here because he just had a monster game last week, so you can look at it from that perspective, but also he has tougher matchups going forward, and you can't really guarantee that he's going to be healthy come fantasy playoff time. You might have already gotten all Dalvin Cook's value for the season thus far, so I think if you can move him for a couple great pieces going to the playoffs, that'd be a smart move.
Plus, on top of that, they played the Packers defense, who can't defend the run to save their life, and they're not going to be winning very many games, I'd venture to say, so they're going to have a hard time giving him 30 carries like they did this last week. At number 3 here, we've got Cooper. Yeah. So at number 3 here, we've got Cooper Kupp, and obviously you see Robert Woods at 4, but the idea here is the Rams just looked really bad passing the ball. Cooper Kupp himself hasn't looked elite the last several weeks, and I know they both stepped up the stat sheet this week, but they were down 21 in a blink of an eye, and it was just, I think Goff threw the ball 61 times, so of course they were going to have good games, and it's just one of those things where it's empty stats, and I wouldn't count on it continuing.
Yep, I echo that for Robert Woods, and he had a great game with a touchdown. So I think if you can trick an owner into buying last week's performance, you'd be wise to sell him.
I agree. I think I would prefer Woods the rest of the season, but
it's tough though.
Yeah, and I think you put Adam Thielen on here, so I'll let you take that one.
Oh yeah, they got a bit messed up. So I have Adam Thielen on here simply because in Minnesota they run the ball a ton, and Justin Jefferson's really coming to his own, and so there won't really be a lot of balls to go around, or really the volume that you thought you'd have with Thielen going into the year. And I don't see that necessarily increasing as the season comes to a close. So I think you should sell high on Adam Thielen.
I agree. So at 6 here, I've got Devonta Parker. I know he's a guy I've spoken highly of previously, but I watched that game between the Dolphins and Rams, and Tua just didn't look like a quarterback that's going to be very capable of supporting elite fantasy production. Their leading receiver on the day was Gaskin, who's now out with a sprained MCL. Devonta Parker had 1 catch for 3 yards, but the stat line looked okay because he got a touchdown. But take out the touchdown, he really just goose-egged you there. And I don't see Tua being a guy early in his career that's going to be able to support very many fantasy-relevant players. So I think you can still get out of Parker and get wide receiver 2 or 3 value out of him just because of name and up to this point production.
So I have Gio on here, Giannotti Bernard. He's been really efficient and talented in stepping up for Joe Mixon, putting up great performances, but I'd argue that right now might be when you can extract the most value for him. They're going into a bye, and I think you can expect to see Joe Mixon back week 10, and I wouldn't really assume that Gio gets the big workload that he's had, so if you can get anything for him, I think you should do it.
Yeah, just go to the Joe Mixon owner and see what the best they can give you for him is.
Yep.
So another guy who's showing up here again, we've got Mike Evans. He scored a touchdown again last night on Monday. And of course, it came in a game without Chris Godwin. But if you look at the games with Chris Godwin, he's been absolutely awful. They're going to add Antonio Brown into the mix this Sunday. I don't know how much that's going to take out of him, but it's certainly not going to help. And he's already been bad with Godwin there. So he's a guy that I don't see even really being that startable rest of the season. And I think he's got that big name and the touchdown production to this point that you can probably trade him for wide receiver 2 or RB2, and I would just do it in a heartbeat.
So I have Travis Folgom here because last week he saw under 10 targets and he's been seeing a ton up till this point, and they're going into a bye, which I'd expect to see Dallas Goedert be healthier coming out of that bye and potentially Alshon Jeffrey coming. So it's hard for me to really buy into the fact that Travis Folgom, although he's really talented, is going to maintain his crazy output with all the other wide receivers and tight ends in the mix for Carson Wentz.
I agree. I think he's startable rest of the season, but he's not going to be as elite as he's been.
Yeah.
And lastly here, I've got Curtis Samuel. He's coming off back-to-back games with touchdowns. He had 2 this last week. I like him as a player a lot. I just don't think he's going to generate very much value from a fantasy perspective because he's not going to get very many touches, and those touches are going to go down even more so this week when McCaffrey comes back. So he's a guy that he might give you the one big play every now and then, but he's not somebody I feel like you can trust. And I think the last 2 weeks are going to be enough that you can trade him for a startable asset going forward, and I don't think Curtis Samuel is.
I agree. Touchdown dependent.
Yep. So that'll be it for our Week 8 buy low and sell high. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. You can follow my Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll link it in the description. If you have any trade questions, start sit questions, anything fantasy football related, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I do a pretty good job getting back to all of you guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.